Okay, Chris Peaks back with Brandon Mosley for our BCS State of Alabama podcast, and we've got former Supreme Court Justice Jay Mitchell here with us, who is headed towards the runoff in the Attorney General's race. First of all, Justice Mitchell, thank you, or good luck. Congratulations on getting in there.
Thanks.
These runoffs, anything can happen, and I know the big thing is turning out your voters. What do you have to do over the next 10 days to get your people to turn back out?
Well, number one, it means just continuing to stay in front of people and share about my experience and qualifications and about my vision for what needs to happen in the next season of the Attorney General's office. So I'm on the road a ton, moving all across the state all the time. In fact, I'm sitting here, as I think I told y'all earlier before we got on, I'm at a Greater Birmingham Young Republicans crawfish boil right now. I just stepped into the front yard to do this interview. So I'm on the road constantly doing that. And then, as y'all may be aware, Pamela Casey, the DA in Blount County, finished third in the primary with a very healthy 25% of the vote. And Pam has endorsed me in this race. And, the beauty of Pam, among other attributes, is she has a true grassroots following. And we are working closely together to get her voters out for us. We need Pam Casey's voters to come out, and let's finish the job here in the runoff.
Jay, I know we've talked before, but could you explain to the voters what you would do differently as Attorney General than what we've done the last 9 years with Steve Marshall? What changes are we going to make?
Well, I think there are a few things. The first order of business for me as the next AG is making sure we get on the problem of dealing with violent crime. Over the last 5+ years, we've seen major upticks in violent crime in our blue cities. And Montgomery and Birmingham are probably the poster children for that. Birmingham had a decent year last year, but we got to make sure the trend line, it actually becomes a trend line in Birmingham that can be sustained. And then Montgomery's just continued to suffer. We've got to have an attorney general who is ready to get on the problem of dealing with violent crime. We got to do it for the people who live in these areas. I care deeply for the folks who live there, but we also got to do it for those of us who live around these areas, because the crime that happens in those areas inevitably spills out. And it impacts those of us living in the suburbs and in rural areas as well. So that's going to be my point of focus. Coach Tuberville, for example, has talked about sending in the National Guard to Montgomery and Birmingham. I support that. I think we can do that in a strategic and precise way that will really move the needle in those areas. And I think it's going to be working very closely with law enforcement leaders and DAs across the state to make sure that we're really knuckling down on that. That's going to be, in my view, the biggest thing that we do. Beyond that, I really see this as an important moment for our country and our state. I may have talked to y'all about this the last time we were together, but with President Trump going back into office, the moment in America has shifted. And with him in for at least another couple of years, I'd love to see the president be able to stay longer if we could figure out a way to do that. But with the president in, with Coach Tuberville soon to come to the governor's office, we have a unique opportunity to really go on offense for the people of Alabama and go do bigger things. When I'm looking at Texas, for example, AG Ken Paxton, who's just won the Senate primary there, Paxton's doing a lot of big, bold, assertive things that I think we need to be in those fights too, whether it's about online child predators who are preying on our kids and those who may be enabling them, going after those who are pushing the trans agenda and even performing or mutilating our children through surgeries. And then going after chemical abortion, for example. Paxton's been very aggressive about those things. What I've seen happening with my runoff opponent and her leadership, her current leadership in the AG's office, is we're doing some lollygagging, and we're doing a lot of joining. We talk about joining an amicus brief, halfway across the country on this or that. And I'm not saying joining an amicus brief is categorically bad, but what I am saying is that, hey, we're Alabama. We are probably the most conservative state in the union, ruby red electorate, and we can and should be doing more. I want to do less joining and more leading.
Justice Mitchell, your opponent and her campaign manager Dalton disputes they have lied about receiving gambling money. They've lied about you taking gambling money. They lied about your record, and now it seems they're going all in about this police officer in Montgomery. The one that they wanted to uphold their conviction. Is there anything they will not lie about?
We'll see. There have been a lot of lies told so far. I'll tell you, I'm doing my level best to, and I'll continue to do this, to really campaign and make arguments to the people of Alabama based on facts and evidence. Look, I'm a lawyer and a former judge. That's what I deal with. I deal with facts and evidence, and they're making arguments and making accusations that just are not rooted in reality. And I believe the voters of Alabama are seeing through that.
Jay, you made an issue of a prosecution of a police officer in Montgomery. My understanding is the Montgomery DA made the decision to prosecute him based on the officer interacting with a individual in Montgomery, basically gunned down an unarmed black man who may have been acting out. And the jury in Montgomery thought that was enough for manslaughter, so they voted to convict. What do you think the Attorney General's office did wrong when they tried to uphold the conviction brought by the Montgomery DA in the appellate level?
Well, let's talk about this case, Brandon. This is the case of Officer Aaron Cody Smith. And let's put some context around this too, atmospherically. This is right after Ferguson. So we know what the climate was like, especially in blue cities, right after Ferguson. Officer Cody Smith was patrolling a very dangerous district of Montgomery. He and his fellow officers in that district had been told by their supervisor, because of a rash of property crimes, to stop anything and everything that moves. Officer Smith was out patrolling one night, late at night, and a man came walking down the street who fit the description of the suspect, or a suspect. Officer Smith got out of his vehicle, stopped the guy, put him up on his car to frisk him, and as he got around his waistband, he felt what he thought might be a weapon. The man hid his hand away and then got away from him. Officer Smith attempted to tase him 4 times, unsuccessfully. The man got up the driveway leading to a house, and along the way made some menacing comments to Officer Smith. Got up the stairs of the house where a family was sleeping behind the front door, got into a dark area of the porch. Officer Smith was doing his duty, got up the stairs to the porch, coming up to apprehend the suspect. Officer Smith moved back to get a safe distance, to get a gap from the suspect. The suspect came out of a shadowy area of the porch after making some menacing comments and after trying to get away from Officer Smith, brandishing a paint pole, and bladed that paint pole toward him, which looked like a weapon and was being used to try to disable Officer Smith. Officer Smith followed his training, shot the suspect, shot to disable him. Unfortunately, the suspect succumbed to his injuries and died. What happened next was that Officer Smith was prosecuted. And yes, at the trial level, he was prosecuted by the Montgomery County DA. And by the way, it didn't take place in Montgomery. Venue was moved down to Dale County, where he was ultimately tried. But here's the thing. Under Alabama law, the Alabama Attorney General has the power to superintend any case from a DA, even pre-indictment, has that authority. And people were jumping up and down and asking our Attorney General's office to get involved and intervene on Officer Smith's behalf because he had followed his training. Well, that never happened. They turned and went the other way and whistled while Officer Smith went to trial, was convicted of heat of passion manslaughter, and sent to Limestone Prison. And we all know how difficult it is for a cop to be in prison. So this case came up on appeal, came initially to the Alabama Court of Criminal Appeals, where all criminal cases in Alabama that are appealed come to first. They upheld the conviction. And then it came to us at the Alabama Supreme Court where I was sitting at the time. Now, the AG's office came in at that point. When it became an appeal, the AG's office came in, and they had every opportunity to look closely at that case, again, afresh, and say, hey, you know what? This is not in accordance with the law. He shouldn't be prosecuted. This conviction shouldn't stand. But they didn't do that. My runoff opponent, who claims to have been pretty involved with all that, they opposed him on appeal. They opposed him and tried to keep him in Limestone Prison. Well, that case came to my court on a cert petition. Unfortunately, there were procedural problems, so we couldn't give Officer Smith the relief that he was seeking. But I'll just tell you, I'm one of these guys, if I see something, I'm going to say something. And so I went over to the side as we had to deny the petition, and I wrote a concurrence saying, hey, we don't have any choice in the matter here. The rules weren't followed. The procedures weren't followed. We can't grant Officer Smith the relief he's seeking. But I'll say this. He would be an excellent candidate to come and file what we call a Rule 32 petition. This is a petition for post-conviction relief. And I just said in that opinion, y'all can go read it for yourselves. I'd encourage you to. It's not lengthy. But I said, look, based on my review of the trial record, the undisputed facts, there's no way this guy ever should have been prosecuted, much less convicted. Well, after my opinion came out, joined by former Justice Mike Boland, and Justice Bryan on the court wrote his own shorter opinion saying essentially the same thing. The AG's office did an about face, and they went and negotiated a plea deal for Cody Smith to come out of prison. Now, when I learned about the plea deal coming to fruition, I'll just tell you, I was pretty unhappy about it. Obviously, I couldn't be involved in that as a judge. That was lying with the AG's office there. But my runoff opponent was on the front lines of negotiating that plea deal. And here's the amazing thing. She's acknowledged publicly, to my knowledge, multiple times, that Officer Smith was wrongfully convicted, wrongfully prosecuted, wrongfully convicted. Well, they made him plead to a felony to come out of prison. Plead to a felony. So you're wrongfully convicted, but we're going to make you plead to a felony. Well, Officer Smith, you can understand, was wanting to get out of prison and get home to his family as soon as he could. So he ended up taking the deal. But amazingly, he came out of prison without his voting rights, without his gun rights, and with the stigma of being a felon, which obviously makes it difficult to be able to go and get a good job. So here's the thing, Brandon, to get back to your original question. My runoff opponent, who was, again, she says she was very involved in all this. She could have gotten involved at the outset, right after this happened, and they could have made sure that this prosecution never would have happened. And then they had another opportunity when it came up on appeal to look afresh at everything. They didn't support Officer Smith. Instead, they did the opposite. They tried to keep him in prison. Only after my opinion came out, and Cody Smith would tell you, I was the only person in the legal system who stood up for him and pointed out what actually happened and how it was at odds with the law and it was at odds with the training standards that we have for peace officers. So I'll just tell you, we got to make sure we have an attorney general in this next season of state government who is going to back the blue. Ms. Robertson's attacking me on the airwaves as somehow turning my back on law enforcement. Officer Smith said, hey, I'm raising my hand here. Nothing could be further from the truth. Jay Mitchell's the only person in the legal system who stood up for me while Catherine Robertson turned her back. And when I'm AG, gentlemen, we're going to make sure that when we have officer-involved shootings, I'm not going to allow politics like we saw post-Ferguson or even later post-George Floyd. I'm not going to allow politics to infect the investigation and the decisions about whether to prosecute police officers for doing their jobs. We're going to uphold the law. We're going to make sure that the officers were following their training, and that's all we're going to go by when I'm AG.
Justice Mitchell, I think I read recently that Catherine Robertson has collected almost $5 million in donation. 2.5 million of it is in dark money. Should voters be concerned with a candidate who will not reveal their donors?
Yes, absolutely. Look, we got to have an attorney general who, number one, is going to be open and transparent in the way that they're doing things. And number two, let's just be real. You're going to dance with who brought you. And I'll just, all of my contributions in this race are 100% disclosed with the Alabama Secretary of State's office. I've taken no dark money, would not take dark money. And 97% of the dollars I've raised are from right here in Alabama. It's individuals, it's families, it's businesses. And the reason why I've conducted my campaign in that way and raised support in that way is because that's the kind of attorney general I'm going to be. Like I said, you're going to dance with the one who brought you. Well, who's bringing me to the attorney general's office is the people of Alabama. That's who I'm going to be accountable and responsive to. My runoff opponent has taken over half of her money through these dark money shell company entities. And it's a huge problem. They're set up to evade our campaign finance laws. And look, let's just be real. They're set up to hide from the Alabama voters. And I would just encourage Alabama voters, as you're doing your research on the Attorney General's race, as you're making your decision, you need to take this into account. And you need to ask yourself, who are these people? Why are they hiding? And why is Ms. Robertson hiding them? And what do they possibly want from our Attorney General's office? I make this pledge to all of the Alabama voters. I am going to be an AG for you and nobody else.
Alabama's got kind of an interesting ethics system where the Alabama Ethics Commission is like 3 political appointees, and you send an ethics complaint in to the Ethics Commission, and they have their own investigators who then send it to the 3 member commission who decide whether or not something has gone wrong and whether or not to find the person, or do we want to send this to the Attorney General's office? Sometimes this can, works, and sometimes it seems like ethics complaints go there to die. Should the Attorney General's office be the one taking the lead on ethics, involving our elected officials?
Well, the Ethics Commission is a 5-member commission, not a 3-member commission, and there've been some vacancies there too. So, I think there've only been 3 there for a little while, so that's probably why you're seeing that vote line. But there are actually 5 positions on the Ethics Commission. To your point, Brandon, I know there might be some discussion around reformulating that or refining how that process works. But I'll just say this: this is the bottom line for me. Where public corruption exists, where credible allegations of public corruption are there, we need to go investigate it. And we need to make sure that the public trust is not being violated. And if it is, it needs to be prosecuted. What we've seen, I think what a lot of people have observed over the last 5 to 10 years is a downtick in public corruption prosecutions. And I don't think that's across the board. I know there are DAs across the state who are doing an excellent job in prosecuting public corruption in their local jurisdictions. I can think of a few right offhand here who've really been very bold and courageous in my view. But the AG's office needs to be right in the middle of that, and we need to make sure if corruption is occurring at the state level or at the local level, we ferret it out and we safeguard the public trust.
Justice Mitchell, these shell companies, pack-to-pack transfers, is this not illegal? And if it is illegal, should our legislature do something to stop this so we know who people's getting their money from?
Yeah, well, pack-to-pack transfers are banned under Alabama law currently. There's a debate about whether these dark money shell companies are operating correctly under Alabama law, whether they're subject to Alabama law and subject to Alabama campaign finance law, and whether they're operating correctly under that. I will say, despite that debate, there is discussion, as y'all probably are aware, of coming in and making sure that loophole no longer exists. Senator Arthur Orr has, I know, run a bill, I think the last 2 sessions, to try to take out the dark money loophole. Even Speaker Ledbetter has spoken up about the need perhaps to do that, because I know a number of legislators and legislative candidates were subject to these kind of dark money schemes. But to my knowledge, the dark money game playing, shell game playing has been the greatest in the Attorney General's race. out of all the different races across the state this year. And that's really problematic for two big reasons for me. Number one, the people of Alabama deserve to know who's trying to influence their elections and will ultimately try to influence the Attorney General's office. There needs to be disclosure. The people of Alabama deserve that. And that's what I'm delivering in my campaign by disclosing everything to the Secretary of State's office. The second big reason is because we're going to expect our Attorney General to go and prosecute public corruption and white collar crime. And the kind of dark money shell game playing we see going on right now on the other side of my race is the kind of tactic, the kind of activity you see when you have public corruption and white collar crime. So we need an AG who's not doing that. We need an AG who understands the gravity of it, understands the problems with it, and will get after it and prosecute it. And, again, I'm the only one who's being transparent with the public about that. And I don't like this tactic going on, but I know the tactic. I know it. And when I'm AG, we're going to ferret it out with white collar corruption and white collar crime and public corruption.
Jay, along those same lines, up in Minnesota, there was a independent journalist. I mean, some little guy basically with like a video cam or whatever the modern equivalent of that is, who started investigating government-run daycares and senior centers and
the Leering centers, right? Isn't that what it was?
Yeah, the learning center. Leering center. Yeah. And, it found that people were just applying for like a government grant, and they get money from all kinds of cool state administered programs. Most of the money coming from the federal government. And I mean, literally, there were people hauling away suitcases full of currency to Somalia, of all places.
Imagine that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming the same type of corruption is not going on in Alabama, but do we have a mechanism to check for that to make sure that we're not being scammed at a colossal level?
Yeah, I think we do. And I think we have a duty. Well, first of all, we have a duty to guard the taxpayers' resources, to guard the public purse. And I'm really thankful for the way the Trump administration's been leading on this, going after the fraud in Minnesota, now going after the fraud that's clearly been occurring in California. That seems to be the new front in the war on fraud and corruption. And y'all may have seen Vice President J.D. Vance very recently, maybe as recently as this past week. They've come out with some pretty major announcements where he's going to be leading the charge to deal with fraud that occurs with federal government resources. As y'all know, there are a number of programs that are dual in nature, both federal and state. And so I think what we need to do, first of all, is make sure we are flowing into the Trump-Vance initiative to ferret out fraud, especially in these programs that are, perhaps federally funded and state administered, or some combo of the two. And then in the AG's office, I want to make sure we have our personnel and resources configured in a way to go after fraud where it may occur. I'm going to have a zero tolerance policy for fraud when I'm AG. It doesn't matter what the threshold, what amount it might be. If we see fraud occurring, we're going to go after it and we're going to prosecute it. Because number one, that's the taxpayers' money, and we've got to guard that. And number two, we've got to deter other fraud from happening. When you go after it and you prosecute it, it deters other bad actors from getting in the game too. And so that will have to be a priority when I'm AG.
Justice Mitchell, if you can't answer this, I understand. I'm trying to think the right way to ask it. But on election night, the first person Catherine Robertson greeted was a lobbyist out of Mississippi. It represents their casinos, and even one out of Australia. Should voters connect the dots on who her backers are?
Oh, well, you're sharing information with me I didn't know. I wasn't tuning in for her election watch party. If that is the case, that seems like relevant information.
I've got an article on it. I'll send it to you.
Jay, the current AG, Steve Marshall, is, moving on a pace to have done the most executions of any, or, overseen of any attorney general in history. Are you comfortable that you can defend those capital punishments before the Supreme Court, and that you're okay with you having to sign off on the papers to put, our most dangerous criminals to death?
Yes, I'm very comfortable going and defending those sentences, and I've got thoughts on this. I'll just say, I actually believe. I mean, the current attorney general may be on pace to set a record. That's probably just because of sheer longevity. He will have been in office for 10 years by that point. But I actually believe we need to pick up the pace in Alabama. We've been averaging, I'm going off my memory here, guys, but we've been averaging, I believe, just over 3 executions a year. And I think the best year under the current AG was 6. And, even if we took our best year and we're able to execute everybody currently on death row, not even counting those who may be coming onto death row in future years, it'd take us about 25 years to execute everybody there, which to me is an injustice. It's an injustice to the families of the victims to not see justice delivered swiftly, and it's also an injustice for our state and for the community. The reason we have or a big reason we have capital punishment is to create a deterrence effect. What we want the community to absorb and bad guys or potential bad guys to absorb is, hey, if I commit a sick, heinous crime, I'm going to death row and I'm going to be executed swiftly. And when it's taking decades to execute these guys, that deterrence effect doesn't really happen, or it certainly dilutes it. We got to pick up the pace on executions in Alabama. I do look across the state line at Florida, and I will say I may have my math off a little bit here, but I don't think it's too far off. I think it was there was about a 7-year period. I think it was 2017 to 2024. I believe Florida executed 14 inmates. Last year, if my math is right, they executed 17. And so having a new AG coming in who decided to make this a priority, to really put focus on it and have the will to move forward with those executions, I think sets a strong example that we can and should follow. We got to pick up the pace here. The other big example we need to follow is President Trump. As y'all are probably aware, his Department of Justice has really doubled down on the commitment to executing those on federal death row. And, they're going to bring the electric chair and the firing squad into the equation, which I'm all for.
Justice Mitchell, we've had you close to 30 minutes and we're respectful of your time. I know you're at an event. Is there anything you'd like to say in closing?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on here. It's just great to see y'all and be with y'all on a Saturday afternoon. And to all your viewers, all your listeners, I need your vote. Please show up for the Republican runoff here on June 16th. That's 10 days from now. And vote Jay Mitchell for Alabama Attorney General.
Good luck next Tuesday or following Tuesday.
All right. Thank y'all.
Thanks for being on, Jay.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Stop recording.